Hi everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at shading modes in 3ds Max. So let's get started. By default, in the perspective view we're getting this kind of a shaded or solid objects, but in the orthographic view we're getting wireframe. So these are different shading modes. So let's go through these shading modes in this video. I'm going to start by maximizing this perspective window by pressing Alt W on my keyboard. Alright, great. Now I have a very basic scene setup here with few objects. Now we are currently in the realistic mode. You can see that by this label here. So this is the current shaded mode or shading mode we have. And now realistic is working fine. You can see I can just kind of orbit around, I can paint around, and its performance is just fine. But if you have a very heavy scene with a loss of geometry, then you're gonna get performance issues in realistic mode. So we can change the realistic mode to a little bit of a downgraded version called shaded. That will be great for performance, and we can still see the objects in the shading and very useful. And we can change shading mode in any viewport by clicking the word here and anytime. So if I click on the realistic, we get this menu here. From this menu I'm going to start by selecting this shaded here, and as I select the shaded you can see the shadows are gone and we have a little less realistic objects, but this is great for performance. You'll get a better performance or much better performance using the shaded mode, and this is very common shading mode that a lot of people use. We have few other different modes that we can use. So if I could click once again on this mode here or this label here and select wireframe, this will show the lines or edges that create the object but not the object itself or the surface. So this is very useful in some cases if you're modeling using the reference. So this will be very useful. And we can switch between wireframe and shaded by pressing F3 key on keyboard. You can see here. Now one thing here in this hotkey is that it will remember the last time which mode you were in. For example, I'm in shaded here, so if I press F3 I'm in wireframe. F3 will take me back to the shaded. But if I select realistic and then press F3, this will take to the wireframe. Pressing again F3 will take me back to the realistic, not the shaded. So this will remember which mode you were in last time you pressed the F3 key. So keep in mind this is a little kind of a trick here. Then we have this mode edge to faces. So if I select this one, this will basically show the wireframes or the line or edges with solid or the shaded objects. This is very useful in some cases. So this will show how dense your model is, and if there are lots of uses of these modes. Alright, so I'm going to turn this off, and we have toggle for edged faces. So the toggle or the hotkey for that is F4. So if I just press that, I can toggle between that mode. Alright, so in the realistic mode, by default we're getting these shadows and lights. So if I just click on this word here and come down here to the lighting and shadows, you can see by default the scene lights is enabled, but we're not getting the scene lights. If you don't have or scenes lights in your scene, then by default 3ds Max will use the default lights. So default light is basically a light attached to the default perspective camera. Alright, and then we have these two toggles, shadows and ambient occlusion. So we can use shadow to turn off the shadow. This will basically take this to kind of a shaded level, so this will be a little bit better in the performance. And ambient occlusion is basically a shadow where two objects are very close together. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, and then we'll just kind of orbit around a little bit and paint around. So you can see that we get this kind of a shadow here where two objects are very close to each other. So if I go back here to the realistic lighting and shadows and turn off ambient occlusion, you can see that effect is gone. But this will slow down your Maya or sorry the 3ds Max if you have this option enabled. So we can enable and disable this anytime. And then we have a few other stylized modes like this clay one here. You can use this one to just kind of navigate around. So this is just kind of useful for rendering if you kind of want to get a little bit of a different style for your render. And we have a few other in this stylized menu. So if I just select this one, you can see here very useful for this kind of rendering in different kind of a scene. We have lots of different options. For example, this ink version here, and you can use these, or you can play around with the different modes here. So basically the idea is that we have a lot of options here, and we can switch between them using, but the most common one, and that the other people use, are wireframe, shaded, and this edge faces. So we have these modes here. So we have one of this one here. This is very good. So these are basically a few shading modes that we can use in 3ds Max. So I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial, and if you have any questions or problems, let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.